1. To set the scene. Recently direct employed at UK HQ for a sizable national B2B company that I had contracted for. Bob is my new micromanaging boss. Jim was my nice hiring manager. The guy who talked me into joining rather than continuing on contracts only mentioned as his warning to cover my rear with Bob made this possible. So, to the story before you lose interest. Bob started our relationship with a request for a one-on-one meeting to understand my role, as it was one they'd never experienced except as an end stakeholder. Seems promising, so I prepare a concise but thorough briefing presentation to outline core deliveries and resource allocations as they stood. Dear listener, I lie not. Second slide, showing the period spread of legal and corporate compliance activities, was up for 3 seconds when I was instructed to cease presenting and dressed down as follows. Paraphrased for expediency and clarity, as Bob had, as I later learned, a tendency to ramble on tangential lines. Do you presume to instruct me, a board director, your superior in all aspects, and your direct manager on how to run my subordinates? No, I presume that you called this meeting to familiarize the key deliverables and legal requirements of a business area that was hitherto the exclusive remit of Jim. If this was a misrepresentation on my part, I apologize, and that's quite enough. You're here to be told what, how, and when to do your job. I'm having a mental replay of overheard break-room conversations about Bob's need to control everything. Bob continuing as I settle into the at-ease pose adopted by frequently disciplined grammar school boys and military recruits. I am in charge. I give the instructions, and you treat everything that can be construed as a request as a direct order. The only time I want to hear from you is for clarifications, authorizations, or to confirm that you have received, understood, and actioned my orders. My blood rushing to my ears, the nails on both hands were close to splitting my palms, but I knew anything I said would end badly for my salary, and I'd have to play nice. So, me almost gritting my teeth, said, "Understood, may I clarify one thing, please?" Bob, with a look of utter contempt, "What exactly was unclear from what I just said?" I revert to a customer service, crap-eating tone. Nothing was unclear, only you omitted to reveal how and when I am to receive orders. He turns crimson. Email, when it hits your inbox. My personal assistant will have minutes of this meeting ready before you've made it back to your desk. Now out. I'm too senior to waste more time on this. About 6 months later, after fastidious compliance with the directives issued to me, mostly via Bob's nice and very timid personal assistant, and carefully covering my archiving all comms and backups to keep us legal, and I add, all whilst discreetly exploring alternative career options both within and outside the company. I am in receipt of a meeting invitation to attend Bob's office. At last the order came forth with opportunity for malicious compliance. It started the avalanche. Bob, not looking up for their monitor, said, "OP, I need you to book 2 weeks holiday to be taken ASAP. This off-the-record request is your #1 priority." Klaxons are going off in my head. I'm about to be stood up to take the fall for the state our compliance submissions had fallen into. Luckily, I did everything required legally of me. I'm not responsible under policy or law for the compliance, only what I'm told to do. I decide this is my chance to goad Bob's ego. 2 weeks, ASAP, gladly. I can hand over everything by the end of this week, and I did get ahead of the monthlies in case you forgot to request them, so we could start with next week and the week after. Bob looked oddly relieved and making eye contact says, "My personal assistant will process and authorize. These monthlies better be perfect. You are dismissed." Friday comes, and the anticipated flurry of last-minute requests and instructions came through. Amongst the laundry list was the utter gem that I had hoped for. A direct email, not the personal assistant acting as, with instruction to keep company phone with me at all times and to keep regular twice-daily contact throughout the 2 weeks. No one asked what I was doing with my impromptu 2 weeks away from the office. I was fortunate to have the chance to fly halfway around the world to stay with my brother. 20 minutes booking flights, no luggage or hotel costs to worry over. Remember that order to be online? Early 2010s data costs were insane. Add roaming, you get where this goes. I dutifully followed orders and ate roaming data like a social media-obsessed teenager. I logged hours and dutifully submitted them to payroll. I drank like a fish and had the best time with my brother. End of the month, I'm back to being a good peon with my head down and keyboard clicking when the calendar entry pings in. Seems I am to be favored with another face-to-face. I have an idea of what's coming, but oh boy. Bob appearing to be in the middle of a meltdown. What the hell have you done? You have caused incalculable damage to my reputation in this company. The other board and Jim were laughing at me, saying I can't control you. You're out. You're over. I interrupt in a parade ground voice, standing to my full 6'4". I'm covered. Your hubris and ineptitude are laughable. If I'm out, it'll be by my choosing, and with a clean sheet. Jim knows full well that I wouldn't drop the ball in compliance regardless of you meddling in things you're not even aware of. Everything you forgot is covered, except your own backside. You're not even peer-worthy, let alone superior to me, even though you may be higher ranking. Yes, I got that from a film I can't remember, but this part is crystal clear. Leave it in the comments if you happen to know. I bid you good day. I turned 180 and walked out of the office into stunned silence, across the open-plan 100-seat floor and back down to my desk. The fallout? I enjoyed the inevitable HR session chaired by Jim. I promised not to use any manner that might be deemed threatening for 6 months. I was also returned to reporting to Jim, who reinstated my OT, plus time in lieu for the time I worked on holiday. And let me get back to keeping things compliant. Bob did indeed have a full meltdown soon after. My show of assertion crumbled the empire of fear. They left to enjoy early retirement and faded into memory. 2. Let me start by saying that I love my job. The location, the benefits, what I do, and most of my co-workers. We're a medium-sized tech company, and our office is within walking distance from my home, and we're in my home city. I know my home city has plenty of problems, but I still love it to death, as it is full of such wonderful memories for me, and I vastly prefer it over the other places I have lived around the country. During lunches, we all get together in our office. I'm a person who has always struggled socially due to difficulties communicating, but I try to make an effort with small talk since people tend to like me more if they have gotten accustomed to my antics. Yeah, I know, not ideal. 2 of my co-workers, though, seem to be in it to rain on my parade for everything I say. They constantly poo-poo on the city, saying it's overrun with crime. It's not. The food is bad, the attractions suck, especially if I ever mention something I like about it. No other thing I enjoy is safe from such conversation. The books I like, the food I enjoy, the movies I watch, the cartoons and anime I binge, they always find a reason to crap all over it, even if they brought up the topic and asked me what I liked. In their eyes, the books are bad, the food makes me snobby, the movies are garbage, the cartoons and anime are immature, even when some of them are insanely popular things. One of them will also walk up to me whenever I'm telling a story and just loudly interrupt to ask a question to whomever I'm talking to. I'm definitely not good when it comes to interruption, and I'm working on improving my control, but this is just to an extent that I find it rude. If I did that to someone, I'd hope they'd call me out on it, but I'm too cowardly to do so since I'm all too aware of how many social faux pas I commit on a daily basis. The other one has expressed some political-ish views that I find gross. They thought that if someone was stealing food from a convenience store, they should be sent to jail for years. And if someone breaks into a car, it should be okay for the police to shoot at them. I know, crime, incarceration, and police brutality are controversial issues. But jeez. In case anyone is wondering about cultural context, this is in America, and we are all non-white men under 35. 2 of us with immigrant parents, and the third the one with the political views, has a work visa. So none of this is anything I can really do much about to make it stop, at least not without causing myself to lose a lot more in the process. So I've started resorting to subtle sabotage and mental trickery to get some payback at these coworkers to make myself feel better. Our office is across the street from a grocery store where we buy snacks 2 times a week. Whenever we do so, 3 out of 5 of us go and get snacks for the whole office. I've noticed that these 2 coworkers enjoy some snacks that no one else seemed to care about, a specific kind of jerky and a fancy cheese spread. About a year ago, whenever I was on one of these grocery runs, I'd wait until they grabbed their preferred snacks and put them in the cart. Then, when no one was looking, I'd throw them back onto the shelves. I know that these 2 coworkers often mentally go to another dimension when I start talking, so I'll start droning on about some BS topic that I don't care about, so they'll tune me out. Then poof, the jerky and cheese are gone. If I'm not doing the grocery run, I'll wait until they get back and the rest of us are helping put the snacks in the office fridge and cabinets. Then I'll find ways to make the snacks disappear. Sometimes I'll just tuck them away and eat them before anyone else gets a chance. Sometimes I'll give them to the office on the floor below us as a gift. Sometimes, if I'm working late until the office cleaning people arrive, I'll give it to them while striking up a conversation. Literally anything to ensure that those 2 coworkers don't get their snacks. They've definitely noticed the absence, but I'm subtle enough that they haven't figured out it's me. To leave some false breadcrumbs away from myself, I've made it so that sometimes, when I'm one of the people shopping for groceries but they are not, their snacks arrive safely. Neither one thinks a person is doing it. At first they just keep rationalizing it in different ways each time, but over time they started losing their minds a little over it and keep getting bummed that they can't enjoy their snacks. This has been going on for just over a year, with their specific snacks disappearing about 75% of the time. I know I'm a crummy person for doing this, but it's my perfect little revenge for these coworkers who also inconvenience me in such a harmless yet hurtful way. Hellfreezer's note: the only advice I'd give here is stop giving them to the cleaning crew, because if they happen to get caught with the snacks, they might be accused of stealing them all along, and they could get into legal trouble. But apart from that, have at it. 3. This story is from a few years ago. It's how I helped my sister and somehow got her company to willingly bypass their own idle time requirements. Her company went to work from home after the lockdown and stayed working from home. At first they required an always-on camera system, but that quickly went away, as the amount of unintended nudity that comes from your average household is quite startling. Then they went with a system that tracks your idle time in teams. The amount of write-ups, meetings, group meetings, and eventual terminations for what was the dumbest requirement ever caused my sister to ask for help. She sent me an Amazon link for one of those USB sticks that jiggles the mouse. I told her don't use those, as even a lazy IT can detect them. At the time, Amazon wasn't selling mechanical mouse turners yet, or at least at reasonable prices, so I looked at building one. I found an STL file for this flowery mouse holder, which I modified to be just a straight monocolor and 3D printed it. I cut out a 1.5 circular disc and put it on a weak motor and connected it to a power source through the USB. I set the wheel to spin every 1 to 12 seconds for a total of 2 to 5 seconds, but ran into an issue. Sometimes the disc spinning would not actually move the mouse. I found a company that would print stickers at $1 a sticker if I ordered 5 of them. So I found this basic pattern of squares and lines crisscrossing each other, and had it printed out to just under the dimensions of the disc. I stuck it on there and the mouse turner worked perfectly. I quickly ran into another issue. Since the disc was raised, it quickly got hung up on the mouse with the sticker. So back into design I went and made it where the dimensions were slightly larger for the base, and sit it where the disc would be 2 millimeters below the actual mouse. After printing it, the mouse sat on the cradle and the disc spun around without touching. The mouse cursor would randomly just move in weird directions at times the disc spun. So, with that all out of the way, I got free lunch out of my sister and delivered it. It hooked into her laptop's USB port, never being detected, and would turn her wheel, decreasing her idle time down to 0. Within 2 weeks, she was recognized as a top performer. She was watching crime dramas with her volume at max until she got a notification that a customer submitted a request. In other words, her productivity stayed the same. So she calls me up and asks if I can make more of these. Thankfully, I saved the STL files and I could order more stickers if I needed. I told her I could make each one for $25. The cheapest on Amazon at the time were like $50, and it only cost me roughly $12 to make them, which went down to $8 to make them at the end. She said several co-workers were asking her about it, and she said she would just give them my number. Within a month, I had built out 50 mechanical mouse turners, which was kind of a waste as this company had 32 employees. I miscounted. Sometimes I would meet 5 or more of her co-workers at a restaurant at the same time, just so I wouldn't have to drive all over. Then one week I get a call from the CEO of that company. See, all of his workers were using these mouse turners, and he wasn't. So when the company published the report on idle times, his was abysmally low. That phone call was one of the most surreal I have ever had. At first he thought I was one of his employees. I told him I wasn't. I worked for a waste management company. I don't, but I wasn't about to tell him. He asked me about the mouse turners. I told him that I designed them for a friend, but that person no longer worked for his company. Again, lies. I was protecting my sister. Not like he couldn't figure it out, but still. He asked if he could get one. This is where the conversation went very weird. See, I tried convincing him to give up the idle timer requirements, as it clearly wasn't important and only harmed his company. I laid out all of my points for it and pointed out that the CEO of the company is buying a device specifically designed to bypass his requirement. He would not budge. He was so into his company dogma that he just wanted one from me. I already had a few left over, so I told him I could make him one for $35. Here is the really screwed up part of the story. See, he asked for a full list of my clients, promising that no one would be fired. He just wanted to know how many. I told him that a list would be unnecessary, as it's every single one of his employees, literally all 32 excluding him. His response was to have the company reimburse each employee the $25 for the mouse turners, and set it up where his company would contact me each time a new employee started. I said I had 10 left over from the initial batch of ones I made, and can just give him those and have him contact me when he runs out. He agreed. Well, that kind of never happened, as a company on Amazon made what is basically the same thing I was making for like $15. Theirs is much nicer than mine was, too. Though a company set idle time requirements which caused issues at the company, now the company buys devices for each employee, so that bypasses the idle timer. Now, others who have heard this story have brought up PowerShell scripts, analog watches, a wait on your spacebar, or any other device that does it digitally or with regularity. I designed mine to have randomization in it. The reason is simple. IT departments can detect those USB thumbsticks, can detect PowerShell scripts that move your mouse. They have usage reports that show your mouse moved 1 time each minute exactly on the minute mark. Not every company has these, and some don't have anything even close to this. But some do, and this device was designed to be as undetectable as possible. One of the guys I gave this to said he has 0 work to do until after his lunch break, so what he does is simply log in, set the mouse turner, and go back to sleep. He has his volume at full blast right by his ear, so if he gets a Teams message, it wakes him up. 4. I'm a 30-year-old woman and my husband is 31, and we like to spend our mornings together since we're on opposite schedules. Usually this means he'll make coffee and I'll make breakfast, then we check in about our days and the goals we want to achieve before going about our days separately. Sometimes when we're feeling active or have run out of coffee, we'll walk the half-mile to the local convenience store and grab a cheap coffee and a snack before walking back home. On this day, I was admittedly feeling pretty rough, as I did not sleep at all the night before. My husband was in a similar state, but was encouraging me to start the day on a happy note, being cheesy and lovey-dovey in the store. We grabbed our coffee, and as we were paying the cashier, I noticed my husband's shirt and wanted to talk to him about it. A niche low-key video game reference. I decided I'd go wait for him outside since it was nice and warm and the sun was only just starting to rise. However, 2 employees were blocking the only entrance, a glass door, and seemingly didn't notice me. I did that awkward thing where I moved both my arms like I was trying to swim around them, and cleared my throat. I even tried to say, "Excuse me," a couple of times, very clearly trying to get outside, but they didn't budge. They were deep in conversation about this very attractive woman who had just left. They made a joke about how they just cleaned the door to check her out as she walked away. I stood there completely dumbfounded and waved sheepishly at them. At this point, one of the guys shifted to turn his back at me, but still didn't move. He just lowered his voice, said something I couldn't hear, and then both laughed. It was almost like they wanted me trapped there, so I started tapping my foot and asked if they'd kindly get out of the way. They did not. I glanced back at my husband, smiling and laughing with the cashier, and I gave him the look. He wrapped up his conversation, met my side, and both men non-verbally got out of the way immediately. I pushed open the door, placing my palm on the glass instead of the handle, and smudged the whole thing up. One of the men had the audacity to call me out for it, saying he'd just cleaned it, but I ignored him. When we were a good bit away, my husband asked me what that was about. I'm not usually so passive-aggressive. I explained the situation and he laughed. We have this joke about how he noticed when we walk together, men will automatically move out of the way for him but won't move for me. They expect me to move for them, so he playfully gave me the full sidewalk. I love my husband. 5. Hi, I'm a young woman of color who looks like she's in high school but is actually in her mid-20s. I have one major example of malicious compliance, as I have been with my current science consulting role at a boutique firm since graduating college. Most of the people at my company have a PhD and/or MS, even though this is completely unnecessary for the job. I do not come from a science background, so this does not benefit me either. It is a bizarre situation, as I am given much more responsibility than many people who are older, more educated, and higher in the company than me. Management clearly does not want someone who looks like me to be a leader at the company, but they give me the responsibilities of someone higher up without the title and compensation. I have been given several reasons as to why I was not being promoted as quickly as others. Side note, I have been promoted several times. My issue is that I am doing more than others in terms of workload and responsibility, and I'm not being compensated for it properly per my current job description. I have just as much or more responsibility than many people above me, and am being treated by a different standard. Before my most recent promotion, which took 2 years to get, my previous supervisor, also a woman of color, but older with a PhD, told me that I was being treated differently by higher-ups at my company based on my age, gender, and lack of education. Although my work product was perfect, she said that I was being judged on how I appeared at first and interacted with coworkers, even though I have friendly relationships with all colleagues. She likely meant that I was too outgoing. She said she wanted to perform an experiment with me. She said maybe I would be promoted if I started putting more effort into my appearance. Side note, I am a confident, charismatic person who, respectfully, does not need to put any more effort into her appearance. Even if I did, it is not her or anyone's business. She said I should wear tighter clothing. So I maliciously complied out of spite. I went from business casual attire that was standard at my office to full-on business attire. I also never wore makeup to work and wore a full face of makeup every day for months. While others wore athletic t-shirts, sneakers, and hoodies, I wore dress shirts, dress pants, and pantsuits. My pastel-colored pantsuit really caught people's attention, and people would continually ask, "Are you going somewhere with a client?" I would always reply, "No, I received feedback that I need to put more effort into my appearance." That shut everybody up real quick. My former supervisor apologized after a week, and she said she shouldn't have said that. I kept up the act out of malice for a few weeks after, and I got the promotion a few months later. I know this is a massive HR violation, among many others not discussed above. I do not have an in-house HR rep, and my company contracts a third party. I am afraid of retaliation, and I do not want to report anything because it will make my job worse than it already is. I know my worth, and have been job searching for over a year since this occurred. I am approaching the final stages of interviews with several positions. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge's Ice Cream, episode 354. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button and share the video with friends and family. If you want early access to these videos so you can get them all at once on the Monday, then you can support me on my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. You'll also find links to the Hellfreezer Discord and the Hellfreezer merchandise store, which is located on Teespring. And if you especially enjoyed today's video, you can leave a tip by clicking on the heart with a $sign underneath the video if you so choose to do. But that is not necessary, although very much appreciated. Okay, no other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: those of you who have gardens, when do you give it the first cut of the year? I say that because I need to go do mine. I hate tending to the garden, but I like having the garden, if that makes sense. So I'll probably do that this week at some point, probably the weekend when I have a bit of time. Then the hedges will need to get done. I've got trees in the garden that probably, one of them needs cutting down, the other needs trimming back. But the fact is, one of them is as big as the house, more or less, and I don't know how I'm going to deal with that one. Because they're apparently causing an issue with getting solar panels installed, which is something that was apparently getting done by the landlord, which is the local council. So yeah, enough grumbling from me. When do you give your grass the first cut of the year? And are you like me? Do you grumble all the way doing it? Or do you really enjoy working in the garden? Pop your answers in a comment below. And before we go, we'll have the answer of the day from a previous video. And this was in relation to who is your favorite Ninja Turtle. And this one comes from Darth Ino, also known as Bellamy Fox, who's one of my moderators. And they say Michelangelo is my favorite. I still giggle when I think about him switching bodies with the Shredder. Thank you very much for your answer, Darth Bellamy. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.